first went into the seminary when I was in 9th grade, and I went to study for my home diocese, the Diocese of Grand Rapids, and I actually survived there for about 2 months. And the first time that I went home after 2 months, realized I was very, very homesick, and I missed my little hometown. I ended up finishing my college degree, got my bachelor's in religious studies, and I often joke that in the 8.5 years that I worked as a DRE, that every time I thought about priesthood, I would buy a new car. Being from Michigan, I tried to help the auto economy. I had, I think, 12 new cars in those 8.5 years. As soon as I would buy a car, somebody would say, well, when you're ready to sell that, let me know. And part of my concept was the further I got in debt, I could just say, sorry, Lord, I got too much debt. I'm the 6th of 7 children, and my mother was Catholic. My father had been raised as a Presbyterian, and my mother basically, I guess, told him in no uncertain terms, you're either going to your church, to your Presbyterian church, or you're coming to church with me and the kids. My dad said he thought about it for about 1.5 minutes, and he said, well, that's a very easy decision, and I can't afford 2 churches. So my dad went to church with us for those 20-some years, but only chose to become Catholic, when I was 21. I was actually his sponsor. It was only after I really got to know the Paulists that I found out that my uncle had studied to be a Paulist. I knew my mother's younger brother. I knew he had studied for a religious community, but I didn't know what community that was. Just before I turned 5, we took our last family trip where all 7 of us and Mom and Dad went on a vacation from Michigan to Lake George, New York. My uncle was there for the summer. So I actually visited the chapel in St. Mary's of the Lake just literally days before I turned 5 years old. And when I look at pictures, it's almost the same. The chapel and everything has the same exterior look that it did when I was not quite 5 years old. I got to know the Paulists really as I started my full-time lay ministry because of our place in Grand Rapids. And the first Paulist that I got to know was Father Dick Sparks, who was on the staff in Grand Rapids at the time before he went back to get his PhD. And he and I became very good friends. But what really attracted me to the Paulists was the real focus on adults and adult faith. My first assignment after I was ordained as a priest, Knoxville, Tennessee, and I did campus ministry at John the 23rd, now St. John the 23rd University Parish.
I quote from a document which the bishops approved in November of 1990. It is deplorable that homosexual persons have been and are the object of violent malice in speech or in action. Such treatment deserves condemnation from the church's pastors wherever it occurs. I certainly encourage you to deny this piece of legislation.
Then I was asked by our president at that time to become our vocation director. And so I moved to New York City, and it was my first time living in Midtown Manhattan, but primarily on the road, meeting with candidates and meeting with people who were interested in the Paulist Fathers. From there, I was asked to become the director or the pastor of our ministry in Boston. We renewed the worship space there. We pretty much renewed the whole building during my time. And actually, our ministry in Boston is very committed to social justice. But one of my greatest challenges there was to help the people realize we couldn't just do social justice on the street. We also had to do it for our staff and employees. And so one of my first things in Boston was to provide a sustainable living wage for our lay staff.
Ladies and gentlemen, to deliver tonight's benediction, Father John Ardis, director of the Paulist Center in downtown Boston.
God of all holiness, we have invoked your spirit to guide these delegates in their work over the past 4 days. As we take leave of this convention in the place where our country's quest for freedom began, words of liberty and equality for all must not be left idly behind in this arena. We rely on you, O God of strength and wisdom, to inspire these candidates, these delegates, and indeed all citizens of this great nation to go forth and build a stronger America.
I was the pastor of our parish in Los Angeles for 8 1/3 years, St. Paul the Apostle in Westwood area of Los Angeles. A large parish with a large school, 540 children in our kindergarten through 8th grade at the time that I was there. During my time there, I worked with Mary Pat Cooper. She and I worked together to raise $24.3 million to build 2 new school buildings, which is why Father Eric had asked me to move to New York and try to get the foundation for our Office of Mission Advancement going, which had been our development and our communication media offices. I brought those departments, moved them from Washington, D.C. up to the Mother House in New York City, and formed the basis of what became the Hope for the Future campaign. But I missed the pastoral ministry, missed the direct day-to-day ministry with people and parish ministry. And so I moved to Old St. Mary's Cathedral and Chinese Mission in San Francisco as pastor in Superior. I would say that the one thing about the Paulists is that we are definitely very, very different from each other. Each have their own gifts and talents and abilities, but I think the good thing is that we're able to bring them together to serve broad needs in a community. And a lot of times I have to stop and think how parishioners often see us very differently than we see each other. And so sometimes I try to put on the parishioners' glasses to see what they find is charming about us as individuals, so to speak. One of the things I try to do every night, just before I go to bed, is to recall the many things that I'm grateful for that day. I'm usually very, very grateful for the various surprising things and gifts of ministry that happened on that given day. I think one of the greatest invitations that I try to help people realize is how much God loves them and what a great gift they are.